I promised you tonight that I would indeed take you and show you something that I covered for an hour on television today at 1 o'clock Central on those 67 terrestrial stations that carry my radio show. Also, we have it for television here at worldviewtube.com. Here is a quote from President Woodrow Wilson. I promised you this tonight. This is in 1913. That's the year they got the Federal Reserve. The New Freedom, it's published in 1913. That was the first year of his presidency. Now, listen to what President Woodrow Wilson had to say. Quote, "Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacturing are afraid of somebody or afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. We have been dreading all along the time when the combined power of high finance would be greater than the power of the government." Let's just stop right there with that quote. Look at that again. 1913, President Woodrow Wilson warns again, quote, "We have been dreading all along the time when the combined power of high finance would be greater than the power of the government." Is that not what's happening today with many of these powerful hedge funds, with the 12 banks that were given a private charter that make up the Federal Reserve that happened in that very year, 1913? Financial power greater than that of the United States. Financial power that puts up the politicians and makes sure that they get elected and then do their bidding. He went on to say, "We have come to be one of the worst ruled. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. No longer a government of free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of small groups of dominant men." Is that not indeed what we see today with groups like the Council on Foreign Relations, the World Economic Forum, and the World Economic Forum's young leaders, global young leaders? It's a small group of people dominating the world. It's a soft despotism. It's the appearance that we have a control. We, the people, government of the people, by the people, for the people, that we elect our folks that are in office. That's the view, that's the feeling, that's the belief, that's the lie in many regards, soft despotism. When in reality, the American people do not elect most of their elected officials. They are selected, not elected. They're selected, and it is oftentimes through crook and hook. Here is a copy of the Congressional Record before we conclude tonight. The Congressional Record. This was again 1917, just a few years later, on the floor of the House of Representatives, Oscar Callaway of Texas. Here is a screenshot showing you that this is a legitimate quote. It's hard to read, so let me bring this to you. He said, quote, "In March 1915, the J.P. Morgan interest, the steel shipbuilding and power interest, and their subsidiary organizations got together 12 men high up in the newspaper world and employed them to select the most influential newspapers in the United States, and sufficient number of them to control generally the policy of the daily press. They found it was only necessary to purchase the control of 25 of the greatest papers." Isn't that remarkable? And folks, that was 1917 on the Congressional Record, citing the plan back in 1915. How many of these men that are so powerful today control not just the papers, but control the media, television? They control social media. Again, a warning on the floor of the House of Representatives back in 1917. He went on to say an agreement was reached. The policy of the papers was brought to be paid for by the month. An editor was furnished for each paper to properly supervise and edit information regarding the questions of preparedness, militarism, financial policies, and other things of national and international nature considered vital to the interest of the purchasers, end quote. So in other words, they were going to use the media to make sure the public thought the way the power elite wanted them to think. They would use the news media to make the American people believe what it is that was the best for them. This is what you call the power elite. I did a whole hour on this today, and one of the things that I discussed in great detail was how it is the power elite believe that they are actually the ones that have been entrusted with news and information and insight, maybe an esotericism, if you will, hidden knowledge that only they have been, well, illuminated to understand. And that makes them better than the rest of us. They also believe that they are, well, appointed and destined to be the masters. Many of them have followed Friedrich Nietzsche, the founder of postmodern thought, who declared that truth and reality are created by man, not by God. Friedrich Nietzsche also declared one of the greatest blights of all time was Christianity. It was Adolf Hitler that liked to have a picture taken of himself staring at a bust of Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche also believed in master morality and slave morality. Does that sound familiar to you today? Master morality and slave morality? Friedrich Nietzsche taught that the highest thing was power. It didn't matter how you got it, just get it. Get the power however you have to. He even talked about spiritualizing cruelty. We watch so much of what's happening in the world today, and we think this is absolutely cruel. And indeed, much of it is. And it is being carried out by a power elite that are following the philosophies and ideas of men like Friedrich Nietzsche, who thought that the highest end of all was power, to be the masters. And he said, Friedrich Nietzsche, the slaves, they'll be, many of them, the Christians, those who believe in absolute truth, those who believe in helping the sick and the infirmed and the elderly. That, he said, was a sign of weakness, and thus revealed that they should be enslaved. So, my friends, what we're seeing today is not new at all. This has been something that's been in the making for well over 100 years. And now these philosophies and ideas have come to be, well, brought to bear upon not just us here in the U.S., but on a global scale. If you're interested in learning more about this, including Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers and many of these psychologists that believe that Christians, those who believe in absolute truth, were mentally unstable, how their agenda has seen themselves as self-actualized, how they believe that pharmaceutical drugs and pot and LSD would help to open up their channels and make them able to obtain hidden knowledge and truth to overcome the idea of one reality, one God through the Bible, then you need to watch my show from today. You'll find it at worldviewtube.com. I spent a whole hour on this. I'll pick it up tomorrow at worldviewtube.com at 1 o'clock Central, both on radio and on those 67 stations and television. But again, we are involved in a worldview war. This is what I set out to do 33 years ago. I founded Worldview Weekends, and we held Worldview Weekend conferences in over 300 locations around America. Written some 15 plus books, trying to help people understand the philosophies of the day. The Bible says, don't be cheated by the philosophies of men. Philosophies can be translated the lies, the fables. Don't be cheated by the philosophies of men that are not according to Christ. And yet many indeed have been taken captive, the battle for the mind. This is what I've been doing now for over 30 years. There are very few people that do what I do anymore. Many of the men that used to do this, many of them have retired, and sadly, many of them have passed away. Sad for us, but not for them, because many of them tonight are much better than we are in glory. But we are one of the few broadcasts that are continuing to focus on the worldview wars, helping people understand that your worldview matters. Your worldview is the foundation of your values, and your values, the foundation of your conduct. And when you understand the dominant worldviews ruling America and the world, you can understand what trends are coming and how to prepare your family and protect them from, well, the battle for the mind. If you appreciate what we're doing, we appreciate your support. WVWFoundation.com, WVWFoundation.com. Thank you so much. May God save America. Take care.